Hi, welcome back. I'm Heather from Elevate Global Insurance Brokers, and I'm here today with my co-host Seth.
Hi, and I'm Seth, and today we're going to chat a little bit about general liability insurance.
That's right. We get a lot of questions about what general liability covers, and we know the coverages can be quite confusing. So we're here today to break them down for you and give a few examples.
Now, you're probably thinking, look, I'm an honest business person and good at what I do, so why do I need liability insurance?
That's an easy thing to think, especially if you're good, like you say, honest business person.
Yeah, but it's also a common mistake as well.
And a costly one. Even competent business owners who mean really well for their customers can find themselves on the receiving end of a lawsuit for an honest mistake or possibly even something that they didn't even do. That can be very difficult and costly to defend against and could even put you out of business.
So, how do you protect the business that you poured your heart and soul, hard work, long hours, and savings into? Not to mention, you're protecting the livelihood of your employees, too.
Well, that's what general liability is for.
General liability protects against losses due to a company's actions just during its daily operations, whether it happens on your premises or elsewhere. It also protects property owners for any physical accidents that may occur on the insured property. And in certain fields, you'll be asked to provide a certificate of liability just to get a business contract.
That's right. Now, when you're looking at your declarations page, you're going to see 6 main parts to the general liability policy that are very important to understand before binding your coverage. The per occurrence limit, the general aggregate limit, the products and completed operations limit, the personal and advertising injury limit, the fire damage limit, and medical payments.
That's a lot of jargon to try and decipher, and it can sound very confusing as to what all those actually cover. So let's go over them one by one.
So you have the per occurrence limit, which is the amount of coverage that will be extended by the insurance company for any one loss under any of the limits in the general liability policy. This can be claims for operations, personal and advertising, fire damage, bodily injury, or property damages to someone else. Each loss paid per occurrence reduces the aggregate limit by the amount paid. And then you also have your general aggregate limit. This is the total amount of coverage available for one or more losses within the policy's annual term. Again, these losses can be for any type of coverage.
So these can be confusing. So let's put them together so we understand. So per occurrence loss could be that there's a bodily injury that occurs on your property. And let's say that it pays out $600,000 because it's a bad loss. What that does is it reduces your aggregate limit. Your aggregate limit is like a bucket of how much you can have per year. So every time you have a loss on your per occurrence, it takes away from the aggregate limit. And so it's important to understand how those play on one another and the relationship between the two.
Definitely. Then you have your products sold and completed operations, which covers the work provided and or products made by the insured.
So we're going to talk about several different examples in this. So the first one is if you're a contractor, and let's say you're a roofing contractor, you're putting roofs on people's homes. This coverage is for your actual work and the product that you sell. And so if you don't do a good job and there's a loss sustained to the property, let's say water damage, this is the part of the policy that will respond under products and completed operations. So if you're selling a product, let's say you're a retailer, you have liability for every product that you sell and represent, whether you manufacture that or not. And so let's take a restaurant, for instance. If you're selling a product and for whatever reason, one of the ingredients is expired and it makes somebody sick, this is where you will get that coverage as well. So products and completed operations also pertains to if you manufacture and sell a product. But let's even talk about if you don't manufacture it and you import it. If the product's liability doesn't follow the product from overseas, you're responsible for getting product liability for that. And so this is an area that it really will serve you well to spend some time with your agent speaking about whether it's the coverage you need or not.
Definitely. And then you also have personal and advertising injury limits, which personal injury refers to slander, libel, invasion of privacy, and defamation. And advertising injury can refer to false advertising practices. This limit's available for suits related to these types of scenarios. Losses paid under this coverage will also diminish the aggregate limit.
So this is a neat one to talk about because people don't necessarily think about this for what it is. And so I've got a pretty neat example that I want to pull out of my repertoire. It's one that I actually experienced myself, and no, I won't say any names. But I sold a general liability policy to a person who left a firm and started a new firm. And during the course of doing that, some of the customers of the previous firm he spoke to and didn't speak very highly of his current or of his previous firm. And so what happened is, because he had literally kind of badmouthed his previous firm and said some things that weren't necessarily true, his previous firm filed a lawsuit, actually two. And so they postulated that it was a loss of about $1.5 million per customer taken. And they ended up settling for $750,000 per account. So if you think about what you're saying, you can avoid dealing with this all the way together. Just keep things on the up and up and be positive.
Definitely. And I see it on Judge Judy all the time. So said this about me on Facebook. Rah, rah, rah.
Well, and it's one of the more litigious.
You don't have to worry about it.
That's well.
Pay it out.
Absolutely.
Okay, now we're on to fire damage limits. This limit refers to fire losses caused to others' property as a result of the insured's action. Like other limits, this will also diminish your aggregate limit.
So I've got a really neat example for this one too. And this one happened early in my career when I was a retail agent. We sold a policy to a company that was selling motorized scooters, just like the kind you would buy at Walmart or Target for your kid. And they sustained a loss due to fire. Well, they burned down their unit in an industrial complex as well as a couple of more. Come to find out, when they were taking the return, they would take the battery out of the electric scooter and shouldn't have stacked them. So word to the wise, never stack batteries because you're going to cause a fire. I know this firsthand. And consequently, they burned down the building that they were in. And so this coverage refers to your actions, whether intentional or not. Well, if it's intentional, that's a whole nother thing. But we know you're not going to try to burn something down, but things do happen. And so if that does occur, this fire damage limit will respond.
That's right. And then you have medical payments. This limit is for medical payments to a third party, not yourself or employees, for incidental payments for minor injuries sustained on your premises. This coverage pays regardless of who's at fault for the injury.
So this is another one where there's a lot of examples that we could talk about, but we'll make it pretty simple. So you have a retail operation or just an office space. Somebody comes onto your premises and they're a customer of yours. Well, you don't know they're going to trip over the chair in the waiting room and break their wrist and have to have surgery, but things do happen. And this coverage responds regardless of whose fault it is, like we talked about, and it is for those incidental medical payments. Normally, it's about a $5,000 limit on most commercial general liability policies, but this is one of those real important ones because things happen that we don't think are going to happen, and when they do, this is what will respond.
And so these are the basic coverages afforded by general liability policy. Now, depending on the type of operation that the liability policy covers, carriers might exclude certain items or even whole coverage types. So you really have to check your policy with your agent before signing. And there's also some great add-ons depending on your business type. Be sure to ask your agent about those.
And also make sure to review your coverage and limits on your policy with your agent before purchasing, and never shy away from asking questions. That's what your agent is there for.
Yeah, and if you're wondering about pricing, what are some of the bigger factors that go into it? Years of experience that you have, your location, the size of your business, the policy details like your limits and coverages, deductibles, and your insurance claims history especially. And remember, general liabilities can happen when running your business. And if it causes damage or injury to a third party, you might face a lawsuit. It's worth exploring all the options available to you with the general liability insurance policy, as they help cover the risks you haven't thought of. Just one lawsuit, even if you give your best service possible, could put your business out of business or impair your operation. For example, in 2016, there's this man in Florida who filed 66 lawsuits against restaurants for not having adequate ADA facilities. And you never know, like you're running a restaurant, all of a sudden you get slapped with a lawsuit, even though you've been doing everything right. And a lot of the restaurants had to settle out of court, but other ones, they ended up going out of business. This is where general liability would have protected those businesses and they wouldn't have had to go out of business. And you don't want that to happen to your business.
No, you don't. Lawsuits against your business damage your reputation, seriously affect your bottom line, and can put you out of business. And general liability can help prevent that. Whereas general liability is a crucial cornerstone of your insurance foundation, depending on the type of business, there may be coverages that would be valuable to your business that you can add on, such as cyber risk, commercial auto, employment practices liability, workers' comp, errors and omissions, and other professional types of coverage, and commercial property and inland marine to protect belongings on your premises and in transit. We can discuss those in further segments.
If you have any real estate topics you'd like to see discussed, please feel free to comment below and ask. And it doesn't have to be an insurance question. We get many experts on this show to talk about other aspects of the real estate insurance industry as guests on here. So please ask away. We want to know and we want to help you. Alternately, you can also email us at info@elevateglobalinsurance.com or visit our website at www.elevateglobalinsurance.com. And we're always happy to help.